we have a situation in the church, or at least people representing themselves as a part of the church. And there's a lot of frustration within those members, believers, that are looking for leadership. And as you see here, this woman who is taking the position as a Presbyterian minister in PCUSA, who says, I felt God's presence with me as I made the decision to end 2 pregnancies, and I felt no guilt, no shame, no sin. And Pastor Michael Jones, who's also the Democratic state senator, he says, the Bible does not speak about abortion. And then we have another case with Pastor David Platt, who admits in a book called Counterculture, shamefully silent and appallingly passive. These are the words that come to mind when I consider my approach to the issue of abortion for the majority of my life as a Christian and as in my ministry as a pastor. And so, I think our first question is, are we sure that abortion is a sin? And I just want to ask these brief yes or no questions just to confirm your point of view here.
Yes, there's no confusion about that subject. Abortion definitely, biblically, is clearly set forth as a sin.
Okay. Do you believe that God has revealed to us through the Bible his opinion on abortion?
You can jump in here, Ed.
Well, I think as we've heard already this morning, Psalm 139 makes it very clear that God values life, that he, and someone else said earlier, which I loved, was we were known in heaven prior to being knit together in our mother's womb. So there's no question whatsoever that God values life, and then God commands us not to commit murder, which is the taking of life.
I think what we see within the church is that because abortion is the leading cause of death, right? It should be a priority for us in our society. In CareNet, 2015 study showed that 4 out of 10, or 40% of women who had an abortion were churchgoers when they ended their pregnancy. A Focus on the Family advocacy study in last year showed that 76% of the church, 76% of the respondents said that the church had no influence on their decision to terminate their pregnancy. Only 7% women said that they discussed their decision with anyone in the church. 41% believed that churches were not prepared to help with an unplanned pregnancy. And then we see that the majority of women facing unplanned pregnancies go silently from the church to the abortion clinic. Young women are captured by demonic lies, in part because older women who have more experience are not being given the forum or the opportunity to warn them within the church. And church members, some mature believers are frustrated with the lack of active involvement in speaking and organizing initiatives within the church to address this very significant issue. And you find many church members are giving up on pastors and just compelled to go out without their pastor out into society. And so this family foundation, I just wanted to advance to, there we go, thank you. Created this article that identified several reasons why pastors say that they are not speaking about abortion, and I'd like, at this point, like to hand it over to you guys to discuss any one of those or something else that we've spoken of.
Well, I'd be happy to address that. I think the previous quote from David Platt is indicative of what's happened in the church. Pastors across the nation have become shamefully silent on the subject of abortion because, and this really is wonderful here, number 4, because they believe that if they preach this message, that it's going to create bondage and create guilt and shame. But the Bible does not, if they're preaching the Bible does not promote bondage, shame, and guilt. The Bible gives freedom. And I will tell you that since last July, I have preached a biblical response to the current amendments in 27 churches in Virginia. So I'm in churches all over, and it is a heavy message. It is a message that a lot of pastors tell me that they wouldn't have the courage to preach. But in every single one, women, I watch tears run down the faces of women in the church, and women will come up and say, I'm 1 in 3. You mentioned 1 in 3. I'm 1 in 3. They'll tell me stories about what's happened, and they will, across the board, say that it gave them a release of the bondage that they've been carrying because they recognize that there is redemption, that God loves them, that they have not ruined their salvation, and that the church loves them. Now, the other question that you mentioned, and I want to give this to Glenn, but is that people don't feel like the church is going to be able to help them with an unplanned pregnancy. This is another area of weakness in the church. The church does need to be the place where a woman facing an unplanned pregnancy feels safe and comfortable to come, knowing that she's going to be not judged, not condemned for whatever behavior led her to this place, but loved and cared for. And the church should engage with local organizations that are out there that will help young women who are facing situations like this.
You know, I'm glad we have such a holistic approach to the subject here today. Every aspect of the problem is being addressed by the people that are here this morning and trying to help those that have gone through an abortion or are considering an abortion. Ultimately, the whole issue of whole culture is they're going to be defined by guilt or by grace. Those are the two driving definitions, and you can be defined by guilt and be very religious or be whatever, but ultimately the only way you can be defined by grace is through Christ. There is no other way to overcome the guilt problem except through the solution that God has offered through his son, Jesus Christ. And the church needs to be settled enough on that subject that it'll preach the gospel unashamedly, that it is glad to proclaim the sufficiency of the blood of Christ to cleanse us from all sin. Going back to the pictures a moment ago of the minister from PCU who's had 2 abortions, the problem is some churches have long since vacated the gospel. They're not biblical preaching churches, and so they're not going to be a help to us. No solution to this problem at all. And then there's others that they're just they're studying the Bible in such a way as to not let the central message of the Bible get to them and impact them, so that they're driven to a place where they can really be saved. We're not, as Christians, we're not in the business of just trying to get people to be good. We're in the business of bringing them to God through Christ in salvation. Now, in order for that to happen, we have to negotiate for much conviction. And this is a problem that in America, as our churches have become weaker, many of them are negotiating, they're marketing the gospel, trying to just get people to come to their church, but not necessarily negotiating for deep conviction. It doesn't take much conviction to be religious. Basically, most of the world has that much conviction. Most of the world is religious. But it takes a considerable amount of conviction to believe that your problem is so severe that you need a substitute to take your place. Or that there's a literal hell. Or that you must be born again to get out of your dilemma. That requires a considerable amount of conviction. And so as churches, we need to be really negotiating for deep conviction. So that they will hear the gospel and believe. You can't get saved until you get lost. And the biggest problem is getting people unsaved so that we can get them saved. That's the biggest trick. You can't get to second base if you don't get to first base. And the first base, in some ways, is just getting them lost. And so this is very important. And I think what we're doing here, going all the way back to the subject, now I'll quickly just bring this up. In 1992, I was here in this little chapel preaching, and I was preaching about the subject of abortion, and there's a lady sitting out there just saying, no, you know, very, very negative. She didn't want to hear this at all. And that was kind of my introduction to the thing, that this is not an easy subject to approach. But we must not sweep it under, because, listen, when it comes to conviction, if we can't get people to feel deeply about human life, almost every other doctrine that we preach is going to be subverted. The true issue, the Christian life, is to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. If we don't do those things, we're no longer Christian. We have to feel deeply about God and love God. We have to feel deeply about people and love people. But if we put a low price tag on people, I'll guarantee you, it doesn't matter what else you're going to teach. They're not going to get it. And so we have to come back to these central doctrines of theology and anthropology, the doctrine of God, the doctrine of man. They've got to drive everything we do in the Christian life, or else it won't be Christian. And so what you're doing here today is central. In 1995, I met Green Hollowell, who introduced me to the abortion clinic. And then, Denny, I don't know when, I met Life and Liberty with you and Ruth, but not long thereafter. But since 1996, we've been trying to do something. And I'm just so glad that you come here today. We're just a small church trying to do something. But if we all come together, and the real key, and I want to thank Bill and Etta and Lorraine so very much, because really what we want to do is to mobilize the church. It's not going to happen if we don't mobilize the church. Culture is downstream from the church. Politics is downstream from the culture. The church has to do it. It's not going to get done if we, as the church, don't wake up to start to do something. Mike knows that more than he's the ambassador to the church, and he's trying to wake up the church. That's what we've got to do. And I thank you. I applaud you as you go back to your churches. You don't give up. We can't give up, because if we lose this, really, we really lose it all. We really do. This is a central issue.
This is kind of an open-ended section. There's no specific number of questions. And so, Jeremy, if you could give me a time check. 21, okay. So, although we started about 15 minutes late, we're now about 5 minutes over. And so, if there are other things that you guys would like to say during this section, we can continue. If not, these gentlemen are inviting any church leaders to have a breakout session in a separate room after this. So I want to leave it to you guys to have any other final questions because of the time.
I'll just close with this. Have courage to talk with your pastor. So many churches, I think pastors, and I'll give you an example. I've had pastors say to me, Mike, I can't preach about the abortion amendment because I have Democrats in the church. Now, this is not what being called a shepherd means. So talk with your pastors, explain to them you want culture preached through the lens of the Bible instead of the Bible being preached through the lens of culture in order to make everyone feel comfortable. As a society, we call conviction now offense. And if you're offended, well, then we're all supposed to affirm your feelings. But God causes conviction in our hearts for one thing, and that is to draw us closer to Him. So it's the love of the Father that does that. And finally, every single person that we see every day is going to spend eternity either connected to Christ or separated from Him. And God is calling on us as disciples to try to fill heaven. And so it's our responsibility to share the truth with people, even if it's uncomfortable. Because I believe a heart that's open to receiving anything is going to receive, even if it's a little bit of a punch to it, even if it's a reality check for them, they're going to receive it. So plant seeds every day.
And I'd like to add this, again, for all of you, whatever area you're working on, some of you are trying to help those that are pregnant and help those that have had an abortion. God bless each of you and all that you're trying to do to deal with this issue. But I would like to just say this word. There's not very many people that are willing to go down to an abortion clinic, and maybe not everyone should. I don't know. But I would say this, that if you are one of those people, and Denny, I just want to commend you because you're kind of a prototype for me on this. You're not going to be really effective if you don't have both courage and compassion. We are called to love people. We're simply called to love people. And I think it's very valuable to love people in the darkest part of our culture. And as far as I'm concerned, there where they're killing babies is the darkest part of our culture. And being there and loving people, it's not easy. I tell the people the good news. If you can't love your enemies, don't go down to the abortion clinic. I can't tell you. In fact, last time I was down there, before I could hardly even get unpacked, a guy got out of his car and started cursing at me. And I'm looking at him and thinking, man, you're having a bad day. What did I do that makes you so angry? Why are you so angry? People are very angry because they're guilty.
That's right.
But we can't get angry because they're angry. We're there to represent Christ and to love them and to speak the truth in love to them. And so it's very important that wherever we are ministering here, we are able to hold to the truth and hold to love simultaneously and help people work through their guilt to find Christ as their answer. That's the only answer, ultimately.
Thank you. All right. Again, I want to invite any church leaders that are interested. These gentlemen will be in the hall, and they're going to have a separate breakout session for any pastors or church leaders who would like to talk privately about this.
May I just ask, I don't know how I get emails, but I follow Mike's Ambassador Network. Family Foundation is a stellar organization. But anyway, do you want to say anything about how people can get connected to that or how their pastors can? Because his prayers on the internet are just amazing, really. But pay attention to their Ambassador Network. You want to say something about it?
Yes, sure. As Jason shared so well, we have speak up teams all over the state. We have a lot of materials on our website, familyfoundation.org, that you can download. Jason has some of them at his table. In fact, I have some more in the car I'll bring in for you. But yes, by all means, get connected, sign up to receive the newsletter. You can go to the Church Ambassador Network. I produce a newsletter a couple of times a month, just trying to encourage pastors and encourage discipleship from the church and encourage pastors to feel bold and strong in their proclamation of the gospel every Sunday, and to pray. Yes, we do. We have a Team Timothy prayer team, which gathers on the phone every Tuesday morning at 11:30. But on Sundays, I send out notes that really are just highlight articles from 4 or 5 different areas that just help us to know what to pray for because of what's happening in the Commonwealth. We share both challenges that we're seeing, as like these amendments, but we also share a lot of the wins that we're seeing as well. And the wins happen when the people of God show up, because friends, if you stay home, and Jason talked about 270,000 people less voted in the November election than voted for Governor Youngkin. And it made a difference. It may not have made a difference in the governor's race, but it certainly did in all the House races. And if your voice is not being heard, including at the polls, then the voice of people who have a different opinion and a different worldview, that's the only voice being heard. And as Jason read, it is so deceptive and it is so full of lies that there are Christians coming up to me every day asking me to confirm, okay, in order for fairness in this gerrymandering one in April 21st, I have to vote yes, right? Because they're confused and pastors won't talk about it. And that's, if you're not getting truth from the pulpit, then you're going to be getting it from CNN, and we know what that means. So by all means, yes, connect with us. We'd love to talk with you.